When I pick up a romance novel, I am assured, based on genre conventions, that I will be getting a story about people falling in love and that it will make me feel good about the world for a bit. If I pick up a mystery, I anticipate the satisfaction of solving some sort of crime as the plot unfolds. If I pick up a thriller, I want to be exhilarated and maybe a little bit scared, right? Like, again, I'm saying things that we already know, but genre manages my expectations. And yet, despite the convenience of these classifications, so many of my favorite works, and indeed many of the canonical works of Western literature, blend, bend, or defy easy genre wow. You know when you misspeak once and then it just continues to roll? Bend, blend, or defy easy genre classification. So as a writer who personally enjoys hopping from one genre to another and blending them with the abandon of a child left alone in the kitchen with a blender, I just love this. I love that we have books that fit firmly within their genre lines. And I love that we have books that refuse to fit neatly beneath any label. I feel like that's very reflective of the world that we live in. You know, we need both. And not just because genre blending is how we ended up with the genres that we have today, right? And all the new subgenres that are constantly evolving. You know, how many of you have read a supernatural mystery or a supernatural thriller, right? Or historical fantasy, a sci-fi romance, some eco-fiction. You know, all of these genres and more evolved from writers who just consistently push the boundaries, you know, bending and blending genres to create something new. So what exactly do I mean by bending or blending genre? Simply put, a work that blends or bends, I'm going to use these terms interchangeably. They do not mean the same thing probably, but in my mind they do for the purpose of this course. Bends genre so these works combine elements of two or more of the major fiction genres, or they subvert your genre expectations. So often, but not always, these blends, like when I say they subvert, right, they are subverting these expectations in ways that delight or surprise the reader versus totally frustrating them, which is what can happen if you unintentionally defy a genre expectation. And even if they're not subverting expectations, you know, they bring together plot elements that satisfy your expectations, as can happen with a blend of romance, for instance, and another genre, where the reader is satisfied by both the romance and the expectations set forth by the other genre. By expectations, I'm referring to the elements of story and genre each brings to the table. Each genre brings to the table. You know, mystery, for example, provides that thrill of solving a mystery. Thrillers thrill. Fantasy and science fiction open up new worlds and possibilities. So there are several reasons why I believe that blending genre can improve your craft. The first is commercial success, right? Today's mainstream bestseller and award finalist lists, I never keep up on my PowerPoint. I get distracted. So, right, I'm going to backtrack for a second. I walk into this bookstore and one of the first things I see is this YA display, and it's just left over from Pride Month maybe, but they're going to leave it up all summer, and it just warmed my heart so much. I thought, if teenage Anna had seen this, she would have just I don't know what she would have done, probably never left this bookstore. So today's mainstream bestseller and award finalist lists are full of books that blend genre, and here at GCLS, we're no different. Readers like the familiar, but they also like things that take the familiar and make it just a little bit stranger. Plus, with so many genre-bending books out there right now, it really could be time for you to finally write that project that defies genre expectations. Maybe it's something that you thought to yourself, I just don't know how I would market this. I don't know how I could sell this. Just by saying genre bending, you can kind of, I don't want to say get away with things, but you can push things. So genre bending by no means guarantees success. And so if you enjoy writing within genre lines, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone in the hopes of becoming a bestseller isn't what I'm suggesting. Instead, there is a second, more compelling reason for experimenting with genre blending in fiction. First, these are just some books that I happen to have lying around right now. I'm teaching a few of them, but they're just recent mainstream critically acclaimed fiction that just totally defies genre classification. So Successful writers, when asked for their advice to aspiring writers, often respond with a variation on the following theme, which is read. Read widely, read voraciously. And this is unquestionably true. But in today's masterclass, I want to encourage you to also write widely. As we go through the exercises and discuss the ins and outs of genre today, I hope you'll begin to see how experimenting across genre lines can flex your writerly muscles and open yourself up to new possibilities. We'll do a series of writing exercises for which you'll need something to write with, whether that's a pen and a paper or a computer or even your phone. You're also going to need some characters. So if you attended Cherie Greer's masterclass on compelling characters, why not use some of the characters you developed there? Or you can pull characters from your current stories. And since these are just exercises, also feel free to use characters from other people's work. I think that fan fiction is a great place to experiment, which we'll talk about more at the end if we have some time. You're also free to use any characters that walk into your head today, as characters tend to do, often without preamble or the courtesy of knocking. So irritatingly enough, I'll be trying to put my thoughts into words, and I'll discover that Ursula K. Le Guin, has already said what I'm trying to say much more eloquently than I ever will. So I'm going to pause and share with you this really short article that she wrote for the Manchester Guardian in April of 2011. So she says, "You can't write science fiction well if you haven't read it, though not all who try to write it know this. But nor can you write it well if you haven't read anything else. Genre is a rich dialect in which you can say certain things in a particularly satisfying way, but if it gives up connection with the literary language, it becomes a jargon meaningful only to an in-group. Useful models may be found quite outside the genre. I learned a lot from reading the ever subversive Virginia Woolf." I was 17, I also was, when I read Orlando. It was half revelation, half confusion to me at that age, but one thing was clear, that she imagined a society vastly different from our own, an exotic world, and brought it dramatically alive. I'm thinking of the Elizabethan scenes, the winter when the Thames froze over. Reading, I was there, saw the bonfires blazing in the ice, felt the marvelous strangeness of that moment 500 years ago, the authentic thrill of being taken absolutely elsewhere. So how did she do it? By precise, specific, descriptive details, not heaped up and not explained. A vivid, telling imagery, highly selected, encouraging the reader's imagination to fill out the picture and see it luminous, complete. In her novel Flush, Woolf gets inside a dog's mind, that is, a non-human brain, an alien mentality. Wow, very science fictional if you look at it that way. Again, what I learned was the power of accurate, vivid, highly selected detail. I imagine Woolf looking down at her dog, asleep beside her on the ratty armchair she rode in, and thinking, "What are your dreams?" And listening, sniffing the wind after the rabbit out on the hills in the dog's timeless world. Useful stuff for those of us who like to see through eyes other than our own. And I don't know what Woolf's dog looked like, but as I was looking for stock photos, I just decided that her dog obviously looked like this. So, no, not yet. Just kidding, go back. What struck me about this essay when I first read it was how closely it echoed my own reading experience. And I have to say, I wish every reader and author who seems to speak directly into their soul the way that, Le Guin and a couple other authors do to mine. So I first read Orlando in high school, and without any context. I'd read some other books by Woolf, namely Mrs. Dalloway and To the Lighthouse, which I'd enjoyed, but they in no way, shape, or form prepared me for Orlando. For those of you who haven't read this work, the premise is essentially a gender fluid character doesn't age and has adventures across time. First as a man, then as a woman, and always arguably non-binary. The scene on the Thames is as burned into my brain as it is in Le Guin's, and for the same reasons. The hauntingly specific details that Woolf chooses are evocative and vivid, and I think of them every time I see a frozen river, which, as a resident of Massachusetts, this occurs with startling regularity. I chose Orlando also because since this is a masterclass and we're all coming from different places, different backgrounds, I didn't assign any reading. So I was trying to think of a couple of books that maybe most of you were somewhat familiar with. But if you haven't read it, that's totally fine. Orlando defies genre categorization. It's a historical fiction. Is it literary fiction, magical realism, queer fiction? Conveniently for librarians and booksellers, the rest of Woolf's work has been so canonized in Western literature that Orlando can simply be shelved as a classic or placed next to the rest of her work. Le Guin's point is twofold. She suggests that Woolf's gift for detail is a powerful tool for writers of science fiction, and therefore an example of reading why outside of preferred genres is essential work for writers, and this is true. But she also, in my opinion, is suggesting something much more subversive, that genre can be both a useful categorical tool and a gatekeeper, and we have too much gatekeeping already in our society. Good writing is good writing. Depending on what good writing means to you, the statement may mean something different than when someone else says it, but I think that sentiment holds. Good writing is good writing across genre lines. So if you're here today, chances are high you want to become a better writer. I know that I do. So let's just make a pact to put aside any preconceived notions about genre that we may have and any strong opinions or hot takes we have about them. You can save your hot takes for Twitter. So what kind of writers, for instance, of low angst romance novels learn from writers of Gothic horror? What do science fiction writers and writers of highbrow literary fiction have in common? What happens when a historical fiction writer and a detective novelist walk into a bar? I don't have a punchline for that joke, but if you can think of one, you can drop it into the chat. So here's what I do know in my infinite wisdom. Writers of Gothic horror know a great deal about atmosphere. You can't write Mexican Gothic, for instance, by Silvia Marina Garcia, without the ability to craft a properly creepy atmosphere. Similarly, writers of low angst romance have a singularly difficult challenge. How do you keep a plot moving without the kind of conflict that so many other writers might find useful? If you're stuck in the middle of drafting your cozy romance, as my editor recently informed me, you can't just drop a body into the middle of a romance series without changing genre expectations, which rude. So a different source of conflict has to be found. And that's going to bring us to our first exercise. So I chose these two books because they both, did very well this past year. And they're very different